Hello, everyone, all of our participants who are here with us. We want to, first of all, thank you for honoring us with your time today. We know, part of the reason why we have this series is because we're all sheltering in place to prevent the spread of COVID-19. And also there has obviously been a lot that has happened in our country since then. And so I just want to acknowledge the heaviness that I'm sure we all feel coming into this session, and just to really say thank you for, even in the midst of all the things we're experiencing, honoring us with your time here. So let me go ahead and get us started with introduction to the series, and then I'll introduce us to the session. So first of all, I want to definitely give some time to honor our sponsors. So welcome to the CAAASA, UCLA, CCEE, Advancing Equity in an Era of Crisis webinar series. The California Association of African American Superintendents and Administrators, CAAASA, and the University of California, Los Angeles Center for the Transformation of Schools put this project together to support equity in virtual learning as we all shelter in place to prevent the spread of COVID-19. This work has been made possible by the generous support of the California Collaborative for Educational Excellence, CCEE. We are grateful for their partnership on behalf of California's K-12 public school students. At the end of our live session today, I'm going to drop in a link in the chat to our survey. I'm going to ask you to complete that survey as our participants, because we really want to make sure that you continue to experience like really helpful growth and resources and support as you are trying to adopt the mindsets and the ways of being that we're encouraging in these sessions. And if you're watching, this session will be recorded today, so if you're watching the recording of the earlier session, you will have access to the survey as well. We ask that you would complete that also, so I'll drop that in the end. Additionally, although we may have time for interaction during today's session and for you to have some of your questions answered, you may not have all of them answered, or as you're marinating on what you learned today, you may have additional questions. So I'll also drop a link to our Ask the Experts portal in the chat as well. And so you'll be able to submit your questions, and then someone who has experience with the topic that you ask about will respond to your question in 48 hours. And then finally, the last link that I'll send you is a link to the webpage where you'll be able to download the presentation from today's session, and also you'll be able to access the recording from today's session as well. One of the great things about these sessions is that we have the opportunity to be really interactive with one another. So please, if you share resources with the group, please make sure in the chat to select all panelists and attendees, because if you only select all panelists, then only the three of us will be able to see it, and we want everyone to benefit from what you share. So please make sure you send it to everyone. And so that's our overall information. And today I want to talk about our actual session. So let me go ahead to the description of today's session is From Advocacy to Engagement, Supporting English Language Learners in These Challenging Times. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn it over to our two facilitators today to introduce themselves, and then I will be here potentially showing the part of the presentation, and definitely trying to keep an eye on the chat so that I'm able to articulate some of your questions. So I'm going to stop talking now so the two of you can introduce yourselves, and then we'll keep it going from there.
Okay, I'll let Dr. Argue. Would you like to go first?
Sure. Thanks so much for having me today. I'm Dr. Elisha Smith-Arriaga, Executive Director of the Education Trust West, and we work with students, parents, families, communities across the state to provide data so that folks can advocate for the change that they would like to see.
And good afternoon, everybody. My name is Ted Alejandre. I'm San Bernardino County Superintendent of Schools here in San Bernardino County. We have 33 school districts with about 407,000 students. And I started here in 1988. So I've been here a number of years and just really enjoy the collaboration of such incredible communities in San Bernardino County.
All right, so I don't know, Ted, are you able to, on your end, are you able to show the other presentations? I'm downloading it right now in case you're not.
No, I don't have it yet given to us. I have mine, but I think Dr. Arga was going to go first in the presentation.
Yeah, okay, because I was trying to upload hers as well, but it's just taking a while to open up. You know how it is like when it's opening up PowerPoint and things just bouncing at the bottom of your screen? That's what's happening right now. It's almost finished verifying, so it should be popping up for me in a second.
Okay, and I was also just able to resend them
Okay.
the other way as well. So
all right, it looks like it's about to load for me. Thank you everyone, for our participants, for your patience. I'm sure we've all had an opportunity to exercise patience in this Zoom Google Meet land we now live in. Oh yeah, and then also too, I saw a question come in from a participant. Yes, participants are all muted and no video. Yeah, it's still loading for me. Hold on. So I don't know if you maybe want to do like a verbal voiceover of just some of what we could anticipate talking about today while it's loading.
Sure, I'm happy to just start off with the first.
Yeah, that'd be fantastic.
What would be off on the first few slides? So
that's okay.
Super excited to join everyone today for this conversation, and you know, given the present moment that we are in, just have to acknowledge how what we'll be talking about today is even more important in the face of what is currently happening here in California and in this country. So we at the Education Trust West have been thinking, as I'm sure many of you have, about what it looks like to support students during these challenging times and how to engage parents and families during these challenging times. And really also have been thinking about how to best do that for students that are the most vulnerable. And so thinking especially about students for today that are English learners. And so one of the things I should just start by saying is that Education Trust West is actually the state office of a national organization, the Education Trust. And we've been around about 20 years. And as I said before, work really hard to put data in the hands of parents, students, and families across the state so they can advocate for the policy change they would like to see at the state level. Oh, perfect. So there are the slides. And we can skip ahead to slide 3. So the way that we think about doing that is really by taking data, putting it in actionable forms, and then as you can see in the pictures on the left, making sure that we bring people together, review what's in that data, and then often, as you can see in one of those pictures back there, have engaged in different advocacy actions at the state level. So whether that's advocacy days, marches, bringing students and parents in and educators in to talk with their legislators, those are all tools that we use. And we think about our work as in 3 big buckets. That's changing the narrative. So really trying to, especially in this day and age, and in the COVID era, center education, the importance of education in COVID recovery. So changing the narrative is one big piece of our theory of change. The second is changing policy. So really thinking about the policies that we need to close the gaps that we see in education. And then finally, in changing practice. So what are the actual practices in classrooms that really lift up some of the things that we know work best for low-income students and students of color? We can go to the next slide. So as soon as shelter in place started, we really worked to think about how do we center the voices of students, parents, and families in the conversation around what's happening in education. And we know that, you know, given that we couldn't be in person anymore, that making sure that those parent voices, those student voices, and educator voices were heard in Sacramento, we needed to think about a different way to do that. We can go to the next slide. So we worked with our New York office and found a polling firm where we conducted a poll of over 1,200 parents of K-12 children in California. And the headlines from that study were that parents were really interested in having much more consistent contact with teachers. They wanted more equitable access to many of the academic resources that they know that their students needed. And then they also really were thinking about what kinds of resources would help to stop the gaps in learning that they knew were happening. We can go to the next slide. So in terms of academic supports, this slide lays out some of our main findings. We learned that 4 out of 5 Latinx and 3 out of 4 African American parents were really concerned that they didn't have the resources for their children to stay on track. And then you see here at the bottom, we surveyed parents in both English and in Spanish. And for parents that were non-English speakers, 25% also noted that they had not received materials in their home language. We can go to the next slide. We also heard a lot from families, and we've heard a lot from school districts, of course, across the state as well, around the digital divide and how it's impacting families. And we also know that that divide is disproportionately impacting low-income families and families of color, as you can see from the data provided here. The 50% of low-income families and 42% of families of color lack sufficient devices for distance learning. And we know that both the Department of Education and school districts across the state have been working diligently around this issue. Next slide. We also heard, not surprisingly, that parents were really concerned about providing for their families. And we heard this almost overwhelmingly from all 1,200 parents. We can go to the next slide. When we looked more at students and parents that were English learners, we learned that 85% of parents felt providing materials for English learners would be helpful, but only 31% reported that their children's schools were providing those materials. We also heard from parents of English learners that 41% reported their children's school was providing information in languages other than English, but we know that that percentage needs to be much higher. Next slide. So if we look at some of the key concerns that parents brought out, especially parents that were parents of English learners, we can see that overwhelmingly parents were concerned about their children falling behind academically and about experiencing higher levels, and they're also experiencing higher levels of stress as well due to school closures. We go to the next slide. So in addition to the poll of parents of kindergarten through 12th graders, we also did a separate poll of 600 parents that was representative in English and Spanish of children aged 0 to 5. And the results here were even more disconcerting, especially given that we heard from 42% of Latinx parents that they were reducing or skipping their meals to ensure that their children could eat. We also found elevated stress levels and high concern about children's social emotional development in this age group. And I have a 5-year-old myself who's a student at OUSD and can definitely identify with some of the findings there about the concerns around social emotional, as I'm sure many of you have seen as well in elementary early students. Next slide. So in addition to the parent polling, we also try to take a close look, and we can go to the next slide, at how the digital divide was disproportionately impacting children of color, children whose native language was not English, and what some of the equity implications were, given all the data that we just heard from parents. And as you can see, we can go to the next slide. What we found is that, and this map, we'll share the slide deck afterward, is available on our website. We wanted to provide school districts across the state with a tool to really look at what the district's projected need was based on some of the subcategories that are already called out in folks' local control accountability plans. And so if we go to the next slide, what we can see here, and this is not a large map, but like I said, we'll definitely send out the deck, but the districts shaded in blue are estimated to have the largest gaps and the greatest need for resources. And what we've been doing is having meetings with superintendents across the state to share this data with them so that they can also use it for their planning purposes and in their response to the digital divide. We can go to the next slide. We can also see that if we look at the counties with the highest overall need in terms of internet access and reliable devices, we see that those numbers are highly correlated with the percent of English learners district serves. So for instance, San Bernardino landed right around the middle there, and we saw that, that the district has around 15% English learners, whereas districts that have a much higher percent of English learners, like CAAASA, for instance, with 38%, had somewhat of a higher need in terms of access to devices for that population. We can go to the next slide. So in addition to the parent poll and the digital divide map, which I should say, what the main way that we have used those tools is that following the polling, we really got the word out to the media around those things. Very shortly thereafter, we saw Governor Newsom actually cite some of that data in one of the statements he put out in terms of how important education is to COVID recovery. And we've also been using it in testifying at the state level around the budget to ensure that schools get the funding they need to resolve a lot of the issues that we know will come as a result of COVID. And so we've been using that data and trying to use the voices of parents and that digital divide data to really do a lot of advocacy with schools across the state to ensure that schools have the resources they need. So in addition to that state level advocacy using parent voices, we've also been developing a suite of tools with many other organizations around English learners and the English Learner Roadmap. And we can go to the next slide. So many of you may have heard of the English Learner Roadmap, which was rolled out last year or the year before. And it's really this idea that 60% of students who are in early childhood programs right now in the state speak a language other than English at home. And so it's now more imperative than ever that we have really strong resources to think about how we provide access to English learners that result in their attaining high levels of English proficiency and mastery of grade level standards at the same time. So for instance, we've been thinking a lot at EdTrust West about what that means for math. How do we ensure that we're integrating English language instruction into math courses so that we're both meeting math standards and ensuring that English learners are receiving the instruction they need as well. Next slide. So the purpose of the English Learner Roadmap that came out at the state level really had three big goals here. It was really to have a much more general and lay out a broad vision for what success would look like in this area for the state. Secondly, one of the goals is really to move the needle in terms of the programs and services that are being provided to English learners. And then also there are a whole suite of tools that are now available to schools and districts to use in terms of implementing a lot of the resources that are really directed to English learners. Next slide. So the reason that the roadmap is so important is that the roadmap really provides a way for schools, districts, parents, students, community members to have a common language around what values that we as a state hold around English learners and how to implement them. And we can definitely share, I saw the question in the chat, there's a English Learner Roadmap website, and we can definitely share that has all the tools and resources listed there. And it's pictured on the next slide, so we can go to the next slide. So these are also, and I'm happy to share these as well, and they're also will be in the slide deck that we share afterward. These are some tools that at the EdTrust West we have developed, and they're both focused on both educators and parents can use them as well to really understand, well, what does the English Learner Roadmap say? How can we think about implementing some of the things that are outlined there? And these tools provide some really, they're like short and easy visuals to understand what the roadmap is and what implementation can look like. We go to the next slide. So thank you so much for your time today and for listening to the data that we gather from students, parents, and families, and especially the families of English learners. And we look forward to partnering with you and thinking about how the data that we have can be helpful, or if you'd like for us to come present it to any of the groups that you're working with, we're happy to do that, as we also have some local area data as well. So thanks so much, and I will pass it right along.
Thank you so much, Dr. Arriaga. Here's what I want to ask. What I can do is I can take, since we can't see the slide anymore, we'll switch the presentations. I'll put your email address in the chat so everyone can see it from the slide deck. Okay. Did you want to take questions now for you, or do you want to both have questions toward the end?
Whichever works best.
I'm good either way, whichever works. I'm here for you all.
Okay. Well, I'm happy to take a few questions now, and then we can.
Okay, awesome. So for those of you who are in the session right now, if you have questions for Dr. Arriaga, please go ahead and type them into the chat. And while we're waiting for questions to come through, if folks have them, I just wanted to express my gratitude because I'm like, I realize that I don't say much at all about myself when I start the sessions. I really want it to be about, you know, the two of you, but I'm outside of Boston, and it's been really, really so helpful to hear from so many of you who've been presenting in these sessions, because I'm like, even though I'm not in California, so much of it is universal and is really helpful as I think about the work that I do on the East Coast. So thank you so much for that. All right, I don't see any questions related to your content. There's like people saying thank you, like gratitude coming through. So I'm gonna go ahead and pass it over to you, Ted, and then I'll wrap it all up again.
Okay, thank you. Now let me get this PowerPoint up in a sec. Okay, can you see the PowerPoint okay?
Yep, we're all set. I can see it.
Okay, great. So again, thank you for giving me the opportunity to present today in this important webinar. All of us know the importance of working with our English language learners and really supporting their needs, and appreciate the data that you gave Dr. Arriaga and the information about our students. Thank you for your presentation. So what I thought I'd do is just kind of share some highlights of what's taking place in San Bernardino County in terms of supporting English learners, but we've also had some community stakeholder engagement areas, as well as student voice. But just starting off with our English learner team, we've got an incredible team here in the county office. It really focuses on building relationships with districts, really having a collaborative environment with school districts, agencies, and families, and advocacy for the students in our county. And then supporting our district leaders through regular network meetings that speak to the key issues for English learners. We have our leadership network, which is offered every month to district leaders who lead the implementation of the programs in their individual districts. And then for our dual language immersion leadership network, we offer that 4 times a year, which is really bringing together leaders charged with leading the implementation of those programs. And that partnership has really developed into a solidified team of passionate educators supporting the needs of English learners throughout San Bernardino County. The professional development sessions on the California English Learner Roadmap, Dr. Arriaga mentioned the importance of the roadmap. We've been offering the roadmap 3 times a year and really encouraging people to attend as a team, focused on the 4 guiding principles of the roadmap. As you all know, the roadmap toolkit was accomplished in collaboration with Dr. Lori Olson, and the main focus was on helping districts introduce it to teachers to implement the roadmap for the teacher's perspective and understanding. And really empowering our district leaders and teachers throughout our county. We had our first annual Bright Spots in San Bernardino County, which was a colloquium of shared best practices for the success of English learners, really offering an opportunity to highlight some of our districts and share their continuous improvement strategies that are working for them. And then providing tools to instruct and provide services to English learners with disabilities. We find that many of our superintendents really are looking for best practices and strategies to support students with disabilities. We have 3 SELPAs in our county, and this was a great collaboration with one of our big SELPAs, the West End SELPA, to develop a session where we offer tools and modeled ways to include linguistically appropriate goals for English learners who had an IEP. And then continuing to offer engaging professional development sessions and support during this COVID period. Once we decided to close schools here in San Bernardino County, along with, as you know, many of the schools, all the schools throughout the state, just a strong emphasis in really accelerating training and support to districts for distance learning programs, and really keeping in mind the considerations for English learners and how online learning would be supportive to them. We know how important it is for students to have that connectivity. And then once they do have that connectivity, how can we offer webinars, offering ways for teachers to offer online instruction to English learners, and really focused on the 6 key considerations based on an article written by Heather Skibbins from the SEAL model. We had 2 districts in San Bernardino County provide instruction to English learners, And that webinar offered to all districts, featuring those 2 districts who shared their best ideas and strategies and how they overcame the challenges during school closures. And we continue to offer engaging PD sessions and support during COVID-19. Our virtual English Learner Leadership Network meetings continue to offer leadership meetings bi-weekly. One of the things I didn't mention on the last slide is that if you were to go to our website for San Bernardino County Superintendent of Schools, right on the very front page, we have distance learning tab that's enlarged so people can go right to it, and you go to our collaboration model and support for all of the distance learning programs we have, including English learners. And I just have to really praise our team who really wanted to support our honorees that we normally do at an annual multilingual recognition event. We've done it for 33 years, and it's a large event in Ontario where we have probably 400 people plus attend, and we honor teachers and paraprofessionals and parents and others. But because we couldn't do that this year, we still wanted to honor our students who submit their essays. We have a partnership with the California Latino School Board Association, and they give cash prizes to the top 3 students whose essays are selected. And we had them do this online to a large group that attended a Zoom meeting, and just really passionate students that gave their essays out loud, read them out loud, and just receiving that special recognition. So being able to do that online was great. I wanted to share with you real quickly just a short video of what the districts are saying about the services that we're offering.
The EL division of the San Bernardino County Superintendent of Schools has been a phenomenal source of support for the Chaffee Joint Union High School District. They are always accessible when we have questions and often serve as a bridge between CDE policy and our successful implementation of it. Their EL roadmap training gave us the tools and resources we needed to begin reflecting on where we were as a district in terms of meeting the needs of our English learners. We even had the opportunity to share some of this EL roadmap work that they helped set in motion at our county's first Bright Spots Colloquium. Our collaboration with SBSS directly benefits our ELs. We've had the opportunity to work with them to provide summer bridge and tutoring programs at some of our school sites. The support that our County Office of Education provides helps us change the trajectories for many of our English learners, and we are incredibly thankful for this.
So that partnership and relationship that our team has established has really been one that supports the needs of students, and we realize the best way to do that is to gain the trust and support through these strong relationships. So just a tremendous amount of effort on part of our staff. And so the next area I wanted just to kind of speak towards is the family engagement team, which offers support to our district partners and families through COVID-19. And we do this through a number of ways, through our family engagement network that's held regularly, online staff networking and professional learning opportunities, and then online classes for families. We have several individuals that are involved, but 2 key individuals that really engaged as a team to districts throughout our county to provide this support, and then working with others across our branches get the additional support. And we really have 3 main areas of focus during COVID-19 through our family and community engagement. That's through technology access, social, emotional, behavioral health, and then basic needs and community resources. We know these are 3 key areas that are requested from our districts, and so we give them that support to support their efforts. And I want to share with you another brief little video from one of our students who speaks to our family and community engagement efforts.
In California, you will always remember March 13th, 2020 as the day that changed what we knew as normal to a new and ever-changing normal school life. I know my parents aren't the only ones who have to help us learn new ways to help us with the learning routine, and also the stress those changes brought to many of us students as we celebrated our school year, promotions, and graduations differently. So as we go to summer break and also prepare for the new school year, the San Bernardino County Superintendent of Schools is providing different online classes and supports to our families, like English and Spanish parent virtual classes on technology, social media, as well as wellness tips for both parents and their kids or teenagers. They're also hosting Facebook watch parties to learn what your school district and also different school districts in our county are doing to help our families get the resources we need. Resources like food, childcare, counseling in case you're experiencing stress and need to talk to someone, and also technology and other academic tips we need to know as we learn what our next school year might look like. We don't have control over the current situation, but we need to remember that we are not alone, and together we will get through this so all of us, students, our families, and teachers can have the best start to the new school year as possible.
So we continue to ensure our practices and supports to districts align with Dr. Karen Mapp's Harvard's research around dual capacity framework. We support our district colleagues and staff with effective strategies to reach out, support, and partner with families, as well as providing families the basic needs, resources, information, supports, and leadership development. These are the supports we're providing to staff and families around technology access. We have so much support from our IT team here at County Schools. They've really been able to coach and practice and collaborate on the most effective uses of technology during this period. Social, emotional, behavioral health, and basic resources is so important. These are there are more practices our family engagement team continues to do to support families and staff through these times. When you talk to individuals about what they're feeling during COVID-19, many will speak to some of these issues that really have an impact on them and their children. So how can we support their efforts? And in the video, we mentioned the webinars, the Facebook watch parties with district and community partners, really to share local resources so the families can receive childcare and nutrition support. And then the work we're doing in collaboration with California Collaborative for Educational Excellence. As some of you may know, we were selected to be the community engagement lead for the state. And this is a multi-year effort where we're partnering with other cohorts throughout the state in our California systems of support. As all county offices are the first line of support in working with districts in the priority areas that they're trying to improve on based on their California dashboard results. There's also the GEO lead agencies that support the efforts of regional teams. And then the statewide leads, which I mentioned for community engagement, that's the work that we're doing. And the strategies post-COVID-19, in response to COVID-19, is our family and community engagement staff made initial personal contacts to families, really shifting the mindset around technology usage, creating district level distance learning content for families in multiple language, and then holding these virtual trainings and webinars to continue to support leadership development, student learning, and family support, holding virtual decisions, making and commitment meetings, and then developing and committing clear communication path. And so the family engagement efforts have really been strong. Our cohort this year includes Ontario Montclair from our county, and then other counties throughout the state, including East Side up in the north area, and San Diego region, and then also in Central California. But family engagement support is so important to support our families who need that connectivity and resources. And then finally, just wanted to share about inclusion of student voice, which is so important to our county. When you look at our county's student advisory panel, we started 4 years ago, or 5 years ago actually, with a little over 100 students. This last year we had over 400 students that represented all of our high schools in San Bernardino County, and just really an all-inclusive effort to hear and recognize and include student voice in decision makings that impact our future. And so we tie students' recommendations towards our county community vital signs, which include education, the economy, health and wellness, and safety. And we have 22 school districts that participate, 56 schools, like I mentioned, close to 400 students, and 41% are English language learners. And when they're completed, they present their recommendations to elected officials throughout our county, including school board members, city council members, state and federal representatives, and then leaders in the community in health and business and other areas. And wanted to share briefly just some comments from our students on the student advisory panels. This first one had to do with health and wellness, which is reducing the behavioral health stigma.
This is a presentation with Healthy Brains, the Stigma Fades. We are focused on the health and wellness sector, and specifically we were planning on reducing the behavioral health stigma. I personally am interested in this topic specifically because I know that there's hundreds and millions of kids all over, not just the country, but all over the world that are experiencing health and wellness issues, mental health issues, stuff like that. A lot of kids don't even know they have it. So, and the stigma surrounding it, it's very inhibiting, especially with the coronavirus pandemic. I feel that now there's all sorts of kids and all sorts of adults experiencing this shared problem. So I feel the need to hopefully speak up and maybe plant a little seed in someone's head.
So you can see on the right, we have the students that are involved in this particular group, because when we bring students together, they're from all the schools, and then we mix them up based on their interest level, and then they form teams, they do surveys and they do research, and then they come up with recommendations. And we have 4 main areas. One is in the high desert, the other one is in the remote desert area, the other is in our East Valley and the West End. And before COVID, we had the desert, the remote desert, and the East Valley able to present their recommendations in person, and then COVID hit. So we had our West End part of our county that we're not able to present, so we did this virtually through technology, and this was an example of what we did. And then I'll share just another very brief video, because we also asked students to speak about not just their area that they were presenting recommendations on, but what was it like right now during distance learning. And so this next one kind of covers that specific area, and we can hear a minute or so for these students that are speaking to that.
But I'm very curious if you can just really briefly and quickly tell me, in this new COVID environment, what's the one thing that you miss the most? You know, you're away from school, now you're working from home and distance learning. What's the one thing that you miss the most? And let's start with Nubia.
One thing that I miss the most definitely is having the ability to properly speak with the teachers, because I take a lot of AP classes and it requires a lot of lecturing and a lot of instruction before I can personally go and actually do the work. So I have a lot of questions, but I never have anybody to answer them.
Great feedback. Thank you, Nubia.
And so we went for that question for every one of the students to kind of share their thoughts, and many of the other ones shared some other kinds of perspectives. The huge takeaways is that students are social activists, students are community service oriented, students are committed to support change, students are resilient and adaptable, they advocate for themselves and others when facing challenges, and they share a significant concern for mental health advocacy and support. And so just a wonderful effort to get input from our students, and also engage our families, and also engage our teachers to support English learners at the highest capacity we can. So with that, thank you again for the opportunity, and I'll turn it back over to you.
All right, so there are, well, first of all, thank you very much. And I want to go back toward the beginning of the presentation to articulate a question that came through for you in particular, Dr. Arriaga. There was a question around if you're doing any work to gather student voice in the data that you collected.
Yes, so actually we have done several listening sessions of educators and students, and actually just completed a poll of first-time college students who were lifting up what they see as some of the main concerns for COVID. And one of the things that students there lifted up, and I saw a lot of people on the chat talking about social emotional wellness of students and students' resilience, but also needing supports during this period in that area. And that's one of the big things that we heard from students in that polling. And, you know, have really been pushing at the state level resources for school districts to be able to provide more of that kind of support.
Thank you for that. And then there was a question that came through. Can you share what the implementation, monitoring, and evaluation looks like with regard to all the services or supports you provided? I think that was for you, Dr. Alejandre.
Can you repeat that? I missed that last question.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Can you share what the implementation, monitoring, and evaluation looks like with regard to all of the services and supports that you provided?
Oh, absolutely. Our team works regularly and meets regularly and brings in some of the collaborative partners we have in our school districts to really look at the services that are provided and then determine how that's making an impact on the priorities of the district, particularly as it's aligned with the not with the roadmap, but with the indicators on the dashboard for the state. So there's a combination of areas that are trying to be achieved, and through that collaboration, they can see where they've made success and where they still need to work on in terms of the challenges they want to continue to attack.
All right, thank you for that. So I'm looking, I just put a reminder in for folks to submit questions in the chat if they have them. But mostly what I'm seeing is, like you were saying about, like, you know, folks talking about the importance of social emotional health for students and gratitude for, you know, for what you've both shared here this afternoon. So just kind of monitoring to see if any other questions come through. Okay, I'm curious to know what academic language development for African American students looks like in your programming.
And is that?
I think it doesn't say to anybody in particular, so I'm thinking maybe for you.
You know, our team really works with all of our districts and their populations and really provides them with the best strategies and practices to support their students, no matter what types of background they come from and where the areas of improvement they need, some of the deficiencies that they may show, how they can really tie it to individual needs for students, and then working with best strategies that are contained in you know, all the resources they have available from CDE, from the roadmap and others. How can they really make that impact and support individual needs of students?
All right, thank you so much for that. And I don't see any other questions coming through in the chat. So unless either of you have other information or other things that you want to share, let me know if you want me to go ahead and wrap us up. You want me to wrap us up? We good?
Yeah, I'll just share that, you know, right now during this time of distance learning, you know, it really came so quickly. And I just really commend not just our county, but all the counties. We work in partnership with Riverside County, but everybody really put forth the efforts to establish distance learning in the most effective way possible and reach out to community partners. And you mentioned, Dr. Arriaga, the connectivity issues and the lack of resources that so many families have. And to really commend our team, because once they realized that there was a lot of connection issues, they really worked through our technology office and through districts to provide connectivity to students that didn't have it, even in our own programs for alternative ed students that have a number of English learners. And then we also took advantage of partnerships with other resources where individual connectivity is not required. For example, with KVCR, our local PBS station, and working with San Mateo Valley College, which that has control over KVCR, they changed their entire programming, daytime programming, towards K-12. So those lessons, I mean, those programs that were shown on KVCR during that time frame covered many different content areas, and our team from curriculum instruction and all the content areas developed programming and interactive activities, work-based learning, and other types of opportunities for students to engage in. So even though they may not have had computer access or maybe not as much as they'd like to have, there was other ways to engage them in learning. And that was one example of a partnership that really has been beneficial for us.
Wonderful. And well, the other benefit too of you sharing that is that we have a couple more questions that came through. So one is, how long does it take for EL students to graduate out of the EL program? If students come to the high school not speaking English, how can they show subject competency to graduate?
And that one I probably oops. Okay, I think I'm okay. That one I probably have to get to my team to give more details on, but certainly if they want to reach out to me, I can connect them with our English learner team and they can provide that information.
Yeah.
I do have a comment from our English learner coordinator. Her name is Angelica Hurtado, and she's fantastic. And she said it depends on literacy in their primary language. And in the chat, she'll respond more in terms of that particular question.
Oh, wonderful. Thank you so much for the support in the chat. And then also, if there are any questions that folks who still have you marinating on it after today, I'll send a link through in a little bit to the Ask the Experts portal. Okay. Another question came through. How do you assess English language learners during distance learning?
Yeah, and I think that's a question that's really common for all students. We had a webinar with our superintendents on how to build in some accountability and really trying to look at, making distance learning more successful for all students, because not everybody has the same level of connectivity and not all teachers are trained on how to deliver content online. So when we first started our collaborative, our technology team through our digital learning team, they provided webinars to teachers and helped them get better at delivering content. And I think our first few webinars, we had several hundred people on each one because they wanted to learn how to utilize online platforms, including platforms like Canvas and others, to really be successful in connecting with kids. And so the key is obviously getting the connectivity up to the highest level you can. And then when you have that connectivity at a level where students are engaged, then how do you make it interactive and meaningful to them as you're providing that content? And if they don't have content, then what are you doing through telecasts? What are you doing through learning resources? Including phone calls. We have special ed programs where teachers are on the phone regularly with parents of special ed students to try to guide them through their IEP goals and objectives. So I think there's a number of ways to get better, but it really takes an effort to know how you're going to be successful for every student you're trying to serve.
Alrighty, so I think we're all set on the questions. And again, I want to encourage folks that if you have questions that come up for you that you're thinking about after today's session, I'll like just in a second, I'm getting ready to drop the links to our resources. So again, thank you so much, both of you, for all the richness that you shared with us today. It's really, really very helpful. The first link that I'm about to drop in now is for today's survey. So please go ahead and take the survey so that we'll be able to get feedback from you. It will help us to continue to shape these sessions moving forward. The next link that I'm putting through is what I mentioned earlier about the Ask the Experts portal. So if you have questions that you would like to submit, that's the link for you to be able to submit those questions. And then the final link is for the website where you'll be able to go to get today's resources from today's session, including both the slide presentations, as well as the recording for today. So that is coming through right now. The last one, I would just say, just give it a little bit of time, because we need to have time to upload the presentations and to get the recording to be able to upload it. So if you don't see it today, don't get discouraged. Just go ahead back and check it out. And not only will you be able to see resources from today's session, but all of the sessions that we've had so far. And there are quite a few pretty phenomenal sessions. So thank you both so much. I hope that everyone stays safe and takes good care of yourselves and your families. And if you come to any of the other sessions, I'll see you tomorrow or another day. Take care, everyone.
Thanks so much.
Appreciate it.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
No problem.